In a small apartment in the Boston suburbs, Madison Hartwell gently stroked the hair of her 6-month-old daughter Emma. The morning sun on Thanksgiving Day streamed through the window, bathing Emma's cheeks in golden light. The sweet aroma of pumpkin pie drifted from the kitchen, and the warm hum of the oven broke the silence. "Today we're going to see your grandpa and grandma," Madison spoke to Emma. Emma gazed up at her mother with large eyes, wrapping her tiny fingers around Madison's finger. In that moment, complex emotions welled up in Madison's chest. She had established herself as a lawyer, running a small but solid law firm. However, deep in her heart, she couldn't deny that she still sought approval from her parents. Every time she remembered the days growing up in the mansion in Westchester County, she felt a tightening in her chest. Her father Robert was a former vice president of a major financial institution, a man who never let his dignity falter. Her mother Patricia was known in the affluent neighborhood as the ideal wife, devoted to charitable activities. Both always demanded perfection and valued the family's reputation above all else. When Madison was a child, every night in the Hartwell family dining room, her father would talk about work while her mother shared social circle events. Madison met their expectations as an honor student, graduated from a prestigious university, and achieved excellent grades in law school. Her parents proudly introduced her to friends, calling her "War Pride and Joy." But everything changed 2 years ago. When Madison became pregnant and decided to divorce her husband Bradley, her parents' love turned cold as ice. It was a decision she made because she couldn't bear Bradley's infidelity and violence, but for her parents, what mattered was the fact of divorce itself. "Being a single mother is shameful. I can't face the neighbors," her mother Patricia said coldly. Those words still remain as deep wounds in Madison's heart. Her father Robert's words were even more cruel. "I have no use for a failure like you. If you intend to disgrace the Hartwell name, never darken our doorstep again." Since that day, Madison hadn't seen her parents once. When Emma was born, she sent news of the birth, but received no reply. Still, she couldn't give up. She believed that on a special day like Thanksgiving, surely her parents would open their hearts. While watching the steam rise from the pumpkin pie in the oven, Madison remembered the recipe her grandmother had taught her. Her paternal grandmother was a gentle woman who often cooked with Madison when she was little. "Family supports each other no matter what," was her grandmother's favorite saying. The pie she was bringing today was also filled with thoughts of that grandmother. As she placed Emma in the stroller and carefully wrapped the homemade pie, Madison told herself, "Today will be different. Surely her parents will melt at Emma's adorableness and accept them as family. They're blood relatives, after all, love should triumph in the end." When closing the apartment door, Madison offered a small prayer, "May today be a new beginning. May my parents be part of the future Emma and I walk together." The morning air on Thanksgiving was crisp and cold, gently caressing Madison's cheeks. Emma was dressed in a new cream-colored dress with a small lace bonnet, looking as adorable as a porcelain doll. Madison chose an elegant navy blue dress for herself as she made final adjustments in front of the mirror, remembering her mother Patricia's frequent saying, "Dignity is reflected in one's appearance." In the car trunk, the pumpkin pie made from her grandmother's recipe was carefully packaged. Next to it sat another box quietly. A plain white box that looked unremarkable, but its weight told of something more than just a gift. Madison glanced at the box and took a deep breath. "Emma, today is an important day," Madison smiled at her daughter sitting in the car seat in the back. "Grandpa and Grandma will surely love you." As the car left the apartment parking lot, neighbors waved warmly. Mrs. Johnson, who lived in the neighboring apartment, was sweeping fallen leaves in her yard and happily rushed over when she spotted Madison's car. "Madison, it's Thanksgiving today. How delighted your parents must be to meet their granddaughter." Mrs. Johnson peered through the car window and gently touched Emma's cheek. "I've never seen such a beautiful baby." Madison answered with a complex expression. "Thank you. I hope so. It'll be fine. Your family. Blood is thicker than water, as they say." Mrs. Johnson's innocent smile tightened Madison's chest. The car passed through residential areas, gradually heading toward the affluent neighborhood. The roads became wider, the houses larger. Westchester County, where Madison's family home was located, truly embodied the American dream. Perfectly manicured lawns, stately mansions, and above all, the atmosphere of a success that the residents exuded. When Madison was a child, she took this environment for granted. Her friends all came from similar backgrounds. European vacations in summer, ski resorts in winter were routine. But now, living as a single mother in a small apartment, she couldn't help but feel the stark contrast. Emma began to fuss, so Madison pulled over to the roadside. "You're hungry, aren't you?" she said gently, lifting her daughter and preparing to nurse. Outside the car window, families busy with Thanksgiving preparations were visible. Fathers carrying turkeys, mothers hanging wreaths at front doors, children playing in yards. Every household looked warm and happy, and Madison felt longing and loneliness deep in her chest. "I wonder if we can be like that too," Madison murmured to Emma while reflecting on her past. Her marriage to Bradley had been smooth for the first 2 years. Her parents also liked him, praising him as the perfect son-in-law. His Harvard education and investment banking career perfectly matched the Hartwell family's expectations. However, Bradley's true nature began to emerge when Madison was promoted at her law firm and started earning more than him. It started with small snide remarks, escalated to verbal abuse, and finally to violence. The affair was discovered right after Madison told him about her pregnancy. "I don't want children. Your career is also in the way." Bradley's cruel words still remain as deep wounds in Madison's heart. But what hurt most was her parents' reaction when she told them about the divorce. "Why can't you endure it?" her mother Patricia said through tears. "Marriage requires patience. Do you intend to disgrace our family's honor with such naive thinking?" Her father Robert was even harsher. "Divorce is out of the question. Hartwell women don't do such shameful things." Even when she told them about her pregnancy, her parents' attitude didn't change. On the contrary, they even said, "We cannot acknowledge an illegitimate child." That day, Madison resolved to leave her family home. After confirming that Emma had fallen asleep contentedly in the car, Madison resumed driving. It was about 10 minutes to her family home. Her heartbeat quickened, and sweat formed on her palms. She truly felt the weight of what she was betting on this day. The Hartwell family mansion was as dignified as Madison remembered. 3 stories of red brick construction, with seasonal flowers planted in the perfectly maintained garden. The front door was heavy oak, with a brass door knocker gleaming in the morning sun. However, as she approached, Madison sensed a strange atmosphere. When she stopped the car and lifted Emma, she could hear loud laughter coming from inside the house. It seemed the Thanksgiving party had already begun. Madison's heart swelled with anticipation. Surely relatives had gathered. It might be the perfect opportunity to introduce Emma. With the pumpkin pie in hand, Madison headed toward the front door. But her feet stopped in front of the door. A red paper was pasted on the entrance door. At first she thought it was Thanksgiving decoration, but when she approached and read the words, Madison's blood ran cold. "No entry, single mothers and their children are prohibited from entering." The writing was in her mother Patricia's meticulous handwriting. Cold and cruel, like an official notice. The pumpkin pie box nearly slipped from Madison's hands. Her arms holding Emma lost strength, and her knees began to shake. From inside the house, cheerful laughter continued to echo. Her mother's high-pitched voice was also audible. "This year's Thanksgiving is special. It's truly peaceful and wonderful without uninvited guests." When those words reached the front door, Madison understood. Her parents had never intended to accept her from the beginning. Moreover, they had deliberately called their own daughter an uninvited guest, in front of relatives and friends. Emma let out a small cry. Madison held her daughter tightly to her chest and felt tears streaming down her cheeks. But those tears weren't just sadness. Anger was mixed in too. Deep, quiet anger. "It's okay, Emma," Madison spoke to her daughter in a trembling voice. "Mama will protect you." Madison stared intently at the red paper. Beyond that paper were the family members who rejected her. Parents who chose appearances over blood ties. And her experience as a lawyer taught her that such choices always come with consequences. As she returned to the car, Madison steeled her resolve. Today would indeed be an ending. But it wouldn't be an ending where she surrendered. It would be the end of old relationships for the sake of a new beginning. While taking out the white box from the trunk, Madison smiled slightly. Her parents had called her an uninvited guest. Then she would leave them a truly uninvited gift. Those who denied the bonds of blood needed to learn the true meaning of those bonds. Madison sat in the driver's seat and pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, breathing deeply. Emma was sleeping quietly in the back seat, occasionally making small breathing sounds. From inside the house, cheerful laughter continued to echo, and the aroma of Thanksgiving dinner drifted on the autumn breeze. All of it felt like events from another world to Madison now. With trembling hands, she took out her smartphone and checked the time. 2 p.m. Still early for Thanksgiving dinner. Madison took a deep breath and tried to organize her emotions. She needed to regain the composure she had cultivated as a lawyer. She couldn't make proper judgments if she became emotional. When she took out the white box from the trunk, its weight renewed Madison's resolve. She had begun thinking about the contents of this box 2 months ago. It started when a young woman came to her law firm for consultation. Jennifer McDonald was an ambitious woman who worked as a waitress while attending nursing school at night. The consultation she brought seemed like a simple paternity case at first. She had gotten pregnant by her boss, but he was refusing to acknowledge paternity, a common story. However, when Madison saw the evidence Jennifer brought, her world turned upside down. Photos, receipts, medical records, and most decisively, a letter written by the man in question. It contained the words, "I will divorce Patricia. Let's start a new life together," in handwriting she recognized. It was her father Robert's handwriting. Madison declined to represent Jennifer due to conflict of interest, but she kept copies of all the evidence. Amidst the intersection of her ethics as a lawyer and her complex emotions as a daughter, Madison had kept this fact to herself for a long time. Jennifer hired another lawyer and was currently preparing a paternity lawsuit against her father. Only Madison and the parties involved knew this fact. Her mother Patricia knew nothing about her husband's affair or the impending lawsuit. Holding the white box to her chest, Madison felt final hesitation about her actions. Was this revenge? Or was it justice through revealing the truth? She couldn't tell which position was right, as a lawyer, as a daughter, or as a mother. Emma's small cry swept away Madison's doubts. Looking back, her daughter was gazing at her with large eyes. In that innocent expression, Madison found her answer. Emma had the right to grow up in truth without deception. And she herself had the right to stand up against her parents' hypocritical attitude. Getting out of the car, Madison headed toward her family home's entrance again. The red paper was still there, its words appearing even more vivid in the sunset light. Madison carefully but surely peeled off the paper. Perhaps because the glue had aged, it came off more easily than expected. It remained in her hands in perfect condition without tearing. Madison carefully folded the paper and put it in her coat pocket. She intended to keep it as evidence. Perhaps it was a lawyer's habit. She placed the white box in the center of the entrance, right in front of the door. On top of the box was a small envelope containing a short message Madison had written. "Please open at 8 a.m. tomorrow. A Thanksgiving gift of truth." The contents of the box had been carefully selected. Copies of all the evidence Jennifer had brought. Photos of her father and Jennifer's secret meetings at hotels. Receipts for expensive jewelry and clothing purchases. Photos of pregnancy test results and obstetrician's diagnosis. And most decisively, her father's handwritten words of love and promises of divorce. Furthermore, as a lawyer, Madison had also prepared divorce papers for her mother Patricia. The alimony claim was for 70% of the marital assets. As compensation for mental anguish due to adultery and promises of bigamy, it was a perfectly justifiable amount. Legal procedure explanations were also enclosed. When she finished placing the box, Madison felt a strange peace. The burden she had carried in her heart for so long finally felt lifted. This wasn't revenge. It was disclosure of truth. And truth carries its own weight. From inside the house, her mother's voice could be heard. This really has been a wonderful Thanksgiving. No unnecessary worries. Madison smiled bitterly. Tomorrow, her mother's worries would increase dramatically. But that was merely the harvest of seeds they had sown themselves. Emma began crying in the car. Madison hurried back and lifted her daughter. Sorry, Emma. You're hungry, aren't you? While nursing, Madison looked up at her family home's windows. Warm light leaked through gaps in the curtains, and shadows flickered back and forth. As a child, beyond those windows was the safest and warmest place in the world for her. Now it felt like a distant memory. Emma, I'll create a different family for you, Madison quietly spoke to her daughter. A family that values love more than blood ties. While starting the car engine, Madison took one last look at her family home. The Thanksgiving twilight bathed the mansion in golden light. It was a beautiful sight, but there was no longer a place for her there. It had taken a long time to accept that fact. But now, she was finally ready to move forward. This is the end, Madison murmured softly. But she immediately corrected her words. No, this is the beginning. The car slowly began to move, and her family home gradually grew smaller. As the scene in the rearview mirror receded, Madison's heart conversely became lighter. Emma slept contentedly, her sleeping face as peaceful as an angel's. Let's start a new life, Emma, Madison spoke gently. I'll teach you the true meaning of family. Loving each other, supporting each other, accepting each other. That's what family is. The car passed through the residential area, proceeding along the twilight road. It was about a 30-minute drive to Madison's apartment. Waiting there was their modest but warm home. And the beginning of their own Thanksgiving, just the two of them. Her cell phone vibrated, but Madison didn't look at it. It was probably a call from her family home, but right now she wanted to focus only on her time with Emma. Tomorrow morning, everything would change. And that change was necessary. Truth sometimes brings pain. But the chaos of truth is more valuable than false peace. Madison believed that. And she wanted to pass on such values to Emma. The next morning, Madison woke to her daughter Emma's crying. Morning light streamed into the small apartment bedroom, announcing the beginning of a new day. While lifting Emma and nursing her, Madison reflected on yesterday's events. That white box had probably been discovered by her parents by now. While making coffee in the kitchen, her cell phone began ringing. The screen displayed "Mother." Madison hesitated for a moment but let the phone ring without answering. It rang again immediately, and again she ignored it. Fed up with the persistent calls, Madison turned off the phone. However, when she turned it back on 10 minutes later, there were 13 messages in voicemail. The first message was recorded at 8:12 a.m., and her mother Patricia's trembling voice could be heard. Madison, what is this box you left? This is a lie, right? Tell me it's a lie. The voice gradually became confused and emotional. Her mother's voice was almost a scream now. Madison. Answer the phone. Right now. What is this? Robert. Robert, come here. Look at this. At the end of the message, the sound of breaking dishes and a man's shouting could be heard. It was her father's voice. After putting Emma in her crib, Madison took a deep breath. She needed to prepare for what was about to happen. She had to handle this situation while maintaining her composure as a lawyer. The phone rang again. This time she would have to answer. Hello, Madison's voice was calm. Madison. Her mother Patricia's voice trembled with tears and anger. What have you done? This is a lie, right? It's made up, right? What are you talking about, Mother? Madison deliberately answered without emotion. These photos. Robert and this woman's photos. At a hotel, this has to be a lie. Madison answered quietly. The photos have dates printed on them, don't they? They were extracted from security camera footage. Forgery is impossible. On the other end of the phone, Patricia's sobbing could be heard. But Robert is my husband, we've been married for 38 years? Why? Why would he do this? Mother, calm down. There was also a medical certificate in the box, wasn't there? That woman, Jennifer McDonald, is currently 7 months pregnant. She's carrying father's child. That's a lie. Patricia's scream echoed through the phone. Robert, come here. Talk to your daughter. Footsteps could be heard, and something fell on the other end. Then her father Robert's low voice came through. Madison, what have you done? Good morning, father. How was Thanksgiving? It must have been peaceful without uninvited guests. Madison's voice carried sarcasm. We need to discuss this matter. Come home immediately. I'm afraid I must decline. I read the paper posted on the front door yesterday. No entry, single mothers and their children are prohibited from entering. I'm an obedient daughter, so I'll follow father's instructions. On the other end of the phone, something heavy fell. Her father had probably kicked a chair. Madison, what do you know? Her father's voice was low and threatening. As a lawyer, I know everything I need to know. Including the details of the lawsuit Jennifer McDonald is preparing to file against you. There was a long silence. Then her father's trembling voice could be heard. Jennifer is filing a lawsuit? Paternity acknowledgement and compensation claims. She claims you promised to divorce your wife and start a new life. There's evidence. Including your handwritten letters. Madison, this time her mother Patricia's voice could be heard. She seemed to have grabbed the phone. You knew, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep quiet? Madison answered quietly. Single mothers aren't family, are they? I thought it wouldn't be appropriate for an outsider to interfere in family matters. But... Patricia's voice was strained. But I am. I'm your mother? Yesterday, the paper at the front door said a no entry. A mother wouldn't reject her daughter and grandchild like that. On the other end of the phone, something else broke. Dishes or glasses, expensive china scattered on the floor could be imagined. Madison, do you intend to destroy this family? Her father's angry voice could be heard. I didn't destroy it. You destroyed it. You betrayed your family, deceived your wife, and rejected your daughter. This is the result. Madison continued. By the way, Jennifer hired another lawyer. The formal complaint should arrive next week. It could become not just a civil case but a criminal matter involving bigamy promises. Bigamy promises? Patricia's voice trembled. Apparently you promised Jennifer I'll divorce and then formally marry you. But in reality, you never filed for divorce. This could constitute the crime of bigamy promises. On the other end of the phone, an argument between the couple began. Patricia's screams and Robert's excuses mixed together, with sounds of furniture falling and objects being thrown. Robert. 38 years. I trusted you for 38 years. Patricia, calm down. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Getting her pregnant is a misunderstanding? Promising marriage is a misunderstanding? Madison held the phone, quietly listening to this chaos. Emma was laughing happily in her crib, the contrast was striking. Eventually, Patricia returned to the phone. She was out of breath and clearly crying. Madison, please. Help me. What should I do? Mother, I also put divorce papers in the box. You can claim 70% of the marital assets as alimony. Considering the adultery and bigamy promises, it's a perfectly justifiable amount. Divorce? But I only know marriage? How can I live alone? After a brief silence, Madison answered coolly. I know very well how to live as a single mother. But I was an uninvited guest, so I'm not in a position to give advice. Madison, please. I was wrong. That paper, that was Robert who? Mother, passing the blame isn't good. That paper was in your handwriting. As a lawyer, I've preserved the evidence. On the other end of the phone, Patricia's sobbing could be heard. Over 30 years of marriage, the social status she had built, all of it was about to crumble overnight. Madison, her father Robert got back on the phone. Can't we keep this matter confidential? I'll pay money. However much. Unfortunately, Jennifer's case is already in another lawyer's hands. And she doesn't seem inclined to settle. Rather, she wants to make it public. Why? Madison answered coldly. According to her, you said, my wife is in the way, and I want to divorce quickly and officially acknowledge our child. But in reality, you had no intention of divorcing your wife or acknowledging the child. She realized she had been deceived. That was. Father, the more you pile on lies, the further you get from truth. Jennifer also has recorded data. Audio of you clearly stating, I will divorce Patricia. There was a long silence. Then a deep sigh of defeat could be heard from her father. Madison, are you satisfied with this revenge? This isn't revenge, Madison's voice was quiet but firm. This is truth. And truth comes with responsibility. You rejected your daughter and grandchild, calling us uninvited guests. But the truly uninvited presence was the person who betrayed their family. On the other end of the phone, something else broke. This time a louder sound, probably a vase or something thrown against the wall. Emma let out a small laugh. Madison looked at her daughter and smiled. This child didn't need such chaos. It was a mother's responsibility to raise her in a loving, honest environment. Mother, father, I hope you'll learn from this experience. Family isn't built on blood ties alone. It requires love, respect, and honesty. When you forget that, true family relationships end. As she was about to hang up, Patricia's final scream could be heard. Madison. Please. Let me see Emma. Let me see my grandchild. Madison answered quietly. Single mothers' children were prohibited from entering. That decision remains unchanged. After hanging up, Madison lifted Emma. It's okay, Emma. We'll have a new family. A family with people who know true love. 3 months later, Boston was in the midst of harsh winter. Madison was reviewing final documents at her law firm while watching snow dancing outside the window. On her desk lay a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Former Financial Executive, Legal Battle Over Adultery and Bigamy Promises, Becomes Quagmire. The lawsuit between Robert Hartwell and Jennifer McDonald had attracted more public attention than expected. With decisive evidence, Robert's defeat seemed certain. To make matters worse, it became clear that Jennifer had been after money all along, and once the compensation was settled, she abandoned him and ran off with another man. Patricia hired a lawyer and filed for divorce mediation seeking division of marital assets. Robert, who lost most of the wealth built over 38 years, now lived alone in a small apartment. His former dignity was completely lost, and he was completely ostracized from local high society. Meanwhile, Patricia also lost her social status and continued to be looked upon with pity by her friends. The mansion was sold, and she too was forced to live in a modest condominium. On Thanksgiving Day the following year, Madison sat across from Emma in the dining room of their new home. Emma, now a year and a half old, was walking around confidently and speaking meaningful words like mama and dada. The law firm's performance was also going well, and Madison had been able to move to a larger house. The table was set with homemade Thanksgiving dishes. Though the turkey was small, the table for two was filled with warm love. Emma, thank you for staying healthy this year too, Madison smiled at her daughter. Emma clapped her hands happily, waving her spoon around. Just then, the front doorbell rang. Madison frowned. She hadn't expected any visitors on Thanksgiving evening. Leaving Emma in her high chair, she headed to the front door. When she opened the door, a familiar figure stood there. It was her mother Patricia. However, the elegant and perfect attire from a year ago had faded, and she now looked exhausted. Her once expensive coat was worn, and she wasn't wearing her usual pearl necklace. Madison, Patricia's voice trembled. Please. Let me see Emma, my grandchild. Madison answered without changing her expression. What do you want at this late hour? Single mothers' children were supposed to be prohibited from entering. Please, I was wrong then. I've lost everything. My husband, my house, my friends. But I don't want to lose you too. Patricia collapsed to her knees, sobbing at the doorstep. There was no trace of the former upper-class lady, just a lonely old woman. Madison looked down coolly. Real family would have accepted us from the beginning. Even with blood ties, without love, you're not family. You chose that. But I've changed. After losing everything, I finally understood what's truly important. Please, give me a chance. Mother, Madison's voice was quiet but firm. You had a chance a year ago. You rejected it. The consequences of discrimination and rejection come back as loneliness. You're experiencing that firsthand now. Patricia cried even more intensely. But Madison's expression didn't change. It's too late. Emma needs family who will love her unconditionally. People who would reject their grandchild for appearances and social status are no longer family. Madison quietly closed the door. She could hear her mother calling outside, but she didn't look back. Returning to the dining room, Emma was looking at her mother with a worried expression. Madison smiled and lifted her daughter. It's okay, Emma. Just the two of us is enough. With real love, even two people can make a proper family. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly. Her mother's lonely figure grew smaller as she walked away. But Madison no longer looked back. At the table facing Emma, Madison spoke words of gratitude. Thank you for another Thanksgiving filled with love. Madison had learned through experience that true family is not about blood ties, but about bonds of love and respect. And she intended to pass that lesson on to Emma as well.